Hey y'all, I'm Simon Zatyrka. I am ready to take you on an adventure. I'm on a mission to tell stories of chefs of all kinds. I want to see what they're doing, seeing how they got into the business, check out the cool stuff that they're doing now, and some lessons they can share with all of us. Because there's more than just one kind of chef, and I'm out to tell the story. So, without further ado, this is Chef Journeys. Let's check it out. All right. Today on Chef Journeys, we have Chef Seth Fernald. He's been the resident chef of Oxbow Farm and Conservation Center out in Carnation, Washington for, gosh, how many years is that, Seth?
3 years, but it's been a nine year conversation that we've been going on to make this happen. So
Awesome.
it's been a long
Well,
journey.
welcome to Chef Journeys. I am so excited to have you here. I love that we both have some fire going on in our backgrounds because, it's wood fire or just go home.
Exactly.
But
Right.
why don't you just get us running and kind of tell me how this whole thing has started, how it started with you in the kitchen, all that. Just give me the
Sure.
run.
No, thanks, Simon. Appreciate you having me today. I'm really excited to be here, and great to tell my side of the story, if you will. So for me, I got involved in kitchens because I was a 16-year-old kid. I had a friend who was a line cook at a crappy bar and grill, a couple towns over, and said, "Hey, I think there's an opportunity for you to work here as a dishwasher." I think it paid $3.90 or something like that an hour. Was to a 16-year-old kid who had just gotten his driver's license, that sounded pretty good. It sounded like an opportunity to get out of town and make some money. So I started working just think it was like Fridays, Saturdays, sometimes Sundays, kind of thing like that. For the first, month or two, just so that I was sort of fit for the job. Didn't have a clue what I was walking into and how difficult it was going to be. And as traditional, most kitchens, they stick the dishwasher in the hottest corner, or it becomes the hottest corner. I don't know what the
Well,
situation
yeah.
is with that, but I didn't love it right off the bat. But what I liked is that there was always this good buzz of energy around me, and I could see the line, I could see what was going on, I could see the tickets coming in, I could see my two buddies who were, maybe a year or two older. They had gone to vocational school, so they had a little bit of cooking experience. Watching them work on the line and make burgers and grilled chicken sandwiches and maybe a Caesar salad or something exciting. But to me, I was like, wow, that's pretty captivating to see what they're doing over there. And I immediately have always had a love and passion for food, but didn't realize how much I had that drive in my body until I sort of fell into that world and immediately was captured. Like, okay, how do I get out of this position as quick as possible and get to there?
How
And
do
I
I
knew
do
that.
that?
How do I do that exactly? So I knew that the sooner I could get my job done and have nothing else to do, that I would then get a chance to maybe reach my hand into there. And then I got, hey, why don't you help us prep, peeling onions or garlic or, some job that, seemed menial to them, but to me, it was an opportunity for advancement. And that really captured my eyes pretty quickly. Like, okay, that's my ticket out of here. And not that I don't love washing dishes, because as you and I both know, any chef, any opportunity that we're given to go wash dishes for an hour, we always are like 100% yes. Nobody will bother me. Nobody will ask me questions. They'll only ask me if the plates are clean or if the spoon's not dirty anymore or whatever it is. But I'm excited to jump back into that, and it always reminds me of where you've come from and how far you've gone in your career. So I applaud anybody who starts out in a dishwasher, and I always say that if I can do this, and I started as a dishwasher 3 decades ago, anybody can do this. So yeah, that's
Awesome.
my how I got involved in the restaurant industry, if you will.
So you work in the local kind of bar and grill feel,
Yep.
and then, I mean, what comes after that? Like, do you just keep working? Uh,
Uh, I moved into like a little pizza shop. There was a like a package store, if you will, that also had like a little restaurant tied to it. It was a husband and wife that owned it. And so she ran the little restaurant, and, it was pizzas and chicken cutlet sandwiches and, similar style food that I was seeing at the bar and grill, if you will. But I had an opportunity where I could work a little bit closer to home. I could get paid a little bit more money, and then I could help out there on the weekends. So it sort of paid both of those opportunities. I think I was bumped up to $4.15, which was a huge,
man,
like, 25 cents. I'm moving places. You better watch out.
That's it. Balling.
And so that
Balling.
was 17 going on 18 kind of thing, my senior year of high school. And so I would, run around the store and do whatever tasks were needed. And then the same thing, then I would go over and help out the pizza shop. And, it was just pre-bought crappy frozen pizza dough and, a slightly jazzed up marinara sauce that they bought and stuff like that. But I got to actually get my hands involved and make a couple pizzas, work on the fry later and, fried chicken sandwiches, things like that. But I was like, okay, I'm really enjoying this. I realized that I liked multitasking. I liked being able to help out two different places at the same time. It felt good to me. And I liked that it was a little bit busy. I have a bit of an adrenaline junkie, if you will. I'm outside from skiing and mountain biking and all that. But that's where the restaurant industry fit into that. Was like, if you're going to work 10, 12 hours a day, you better find something you're excited about and you really enjoy. And so, the rush would come on a Friday night and, whether there was, NCAA going on or something, and, you'd sell an extra 50 pizzas or whatever it was. So I really enjoyed that, like, energy and excitement and, hurry up, get ready and all that kind of fun stuff. So
it's addictive, right?
It is so addictive. And so I really fell in love with that. And then did that for a year out of high school, realized I wasn't really going anywhere. I wasn't really impressed with what, I wanted to move on, if you will, in my career or get another opportunity to do something else. And so I applied to culinary school. And they didn't want to take me at first because my grades weren't so good. And I didn't really like school as a kid. But I managed to prove that I was worth getting into. And once I got into culinary school, it clicked right away. I fell in love with the aspect that it was all about food. And I got Dean's List first semester, and I was like, okay, like this is a place where I can spend a lot of time. And I had such admiration for the chefs and everything they did. So it was a great opportunity, and I wouldn't have changed anything for me.
Awesome. I mean, I think I know that for myself as a young cook, I never went to culinary school, but I always I kind of started in a similar space to you, like pretty simple food. How did like that progression go for you? Like, did you look out and go, I want to do fine dining. I want to, like, for me it was that's the mountain to climb.
Yeah, of course.
Just more techniques, more stuff to learn.
Yeah.
I personally thought that like that was gonna be like the way to go as far as like a little more money, but come to find out we've all learned that like just because it's fine dining doesn't mean that there's actually more money in it.
No. So there's more food in the money and the food. There's more money in the food than there is in the cooks.
Yeah,
or the chefs, if you will.
Yeah.
For me, that was my senior year of culinary school. I, learned some classic techniques, and I was really, really enjoying what I was learning. But my senior year, I did a project with 3 or 4 other chefs, and a couple of them cooks. We were all cooks at the time, just culinary school kids. But one of the guys had was working in Boston. He had a little bit more education than I did, and we did a whole menu that was just based around beets. And that was when it sort of opened my eye that we were kind of conceptualize an entire menu around one single ingredient and I think we did, 5 or 6 courses. There was foams and all these silly things that, were very relevant at that time. But that was really what opened my eyes to like, wait a minute, you can take one single ingredient, you can make so many different layers out of it. And you can build a whole dish based on this one thing. And so after that, I asked him, like, where is this? Like, I have to know, where is this energy coming from? How are you figuring this out? And then he introduced me to the French Laundry Cookbook, which I know you and I have discussed. And that became my Bible for the next couple of years. Between that and Kitchen Confidential, and I had the opportunity, I was being a TA at the time for Johnson & Wales. And so I got to sort of pass a little bit of that knowledge on to some of the students that were really interested in the craft of cooking. But that's when it opened my eyes, like, oh, there's a whole world that I didn't realize at the time. I had already been exposed to a couple times because I had an uncle that had taken me some really nice restaurants. And luckily I ended up working for one of those chefs that's further down the road. But that's what really opened my eyes to, there's a whole nother world out there. And I spent probably at least a decade obsessing about that and really trying to learn as much as I could, which was great because it taught me a lot about my craft. from learning how to make gnocchi from hand to spetzel to doughs to hydrations to pastries to fermentation and everything in between that. It really opened my eyes to there was so many layers that I would never learn at all. And so
Right.
that's where it all sort of began for me.
It gets limitless too. It's like, oh, I'm in a
Mhm.
rabbit hole over here. Wait,
Uh-huh.
oh, let's learn this kind of dough, and then well,
Yeah,
in this country they do that. Yeah, I feel you.
exactly.
Um,
And then you find the similarities between the two,
yeah,
whether you're talking about pizza dough or unleavened dough like naan or something like that. You learn that there's so many similarities between so many countries. There's just a different terminology and a different way that their grandmother made it or whatever it was, that you can find it. Not always a common bond, but we find that food is our common bond between us and wherever you are in the world. So yeah, it's really exciting.
yeah. It's it's funny. Like I think about chef journeys, and I just think about all the places you can go in your mind with food, and like the
Right.
trips that it takes you down. All right, so fine dining has come. You've gone to culinary school.
Hmm.
From there, let's do a kind of a quantum leap. Tell me
Sure.
how like you get to the farm and where you get to be cooking
Sure.
outdoors and you get to be doing kind of what seems like really dream life. Tell me how
Yeah, I
that
Sure, absolutely. When
happened.
I about a decade ago, we drove. Well, we flew. My wife and daughter. We flew to Washington. Drove out through here, sort of an exploratory, if you will, weekend to sort of see if this was a place we wanted to set down some deeper roots. We loved living in Boston, but we felt like we wanted to forge our own story, if you will. And so I drove through Woodinville, learned about wineries. Thought, oh, this seems amazing. This is an opportunity that doesn't exist on the East Coast. Let me see if I can figure that out. Food, being tied to farms and who it's the purveyor is has always been a story, and that was really important to me as I was leaving Boston. So I was lucky enough to land in Seattle, meet Tamara Murphy from Terra Plata. She's been here a lot longer than I have. Had some great connections with that, and so that's where it sort of began. I started meeting some of the farmers, some of the foragers and whatnot, and wanted to sort of dive down that rabbit hole. And about 6 months into that, landed the opportunity to go to Novelty Organic Winery, help them sort of rebuild their culinary program there, which was a dream. It was everything I'd wanted and I've manifested in the last 10 years since I moved here to Washington. I've been really blessed with that. But through that relationship, I learned of Oxbow Farms and conservation tied to Judy Beck and Tom Alberg. And they're also owners slash partners of Novelty Organic Winery. So that's where the conversation sort of started. Why don't you come out and check out our farm and maybe do a dinner with us or an opportunity with us in the near future? So I went out and we did a dinner for Schwab, and cooked for about 65 people on the farm. And it was the first time I really got to take everything I've been wanting to do and sort of connect the dots. We bought some beautiful beef, Wagyu beef from in Bothell, actually. George is no longer farming beef there, but we bought some ribs from him. We brought those to the farm. We put them over a fire, like you're looking at behind me, or probably a little bit similar to what you have at Santa Maria, um, and hung them for about, I don't know, 10 hours and grilled our vegetables underneath there. And it was all stuff that was from the farm. And really said, okay, this is what I want to do. How do I do this all the time, permanently going forward? And so that began this 9-year question of how do we make this happen? Can we make this happen? What does this look like? And I spent quite a few years with a winery, sort of phased out, left, moved on to a company called Fair Start, which many people here in Seattle will know is a great nonprofit that focuses on um, feeding homeless and people who have food insecurities, but working with people that are coming out of incarceration. And I love the opportunity, but while that happened, the farm sort of reached back out and said, we'd love to continue this partnership. How do we grow it more? How can we make that happen? And so we sort of slowly worked in where I would go out once a month. We would do these events, sort of free reign. It was really nice to sort of step outside of, the kitchen that I was working in and be out in an open field and sort of do what I had always dreamed of. And so we did that for a couple of years. COVID happened, as you and I both know. It really changed all of our worlds, but it also gave a lot of businesses the opportunity to do a reset. And so during that time, they said, hey, the old saying, if we build it, will you come? And I said, well, absolutely. I mean, that's why I moved here. And so we built me a kitchen space and I get to help design it. And we had a couple bumpy years where, we were learning about plumbing and electrical and all these things that we needed to make it work. But it allowed us to build this great relationship. And so now we have a beautiful outdoor kitchen that there's nothing like it as far as I've ever seen here in Washington, particularly, where it's literally centered in the middle of a field, and there's kids in the ground. They're pulling roots, whether it's carrots or even picking strawberries in May. But they're really understanding where their food comes from. And then we get to partner with those kids. And sometimes I develop the menu, sometimes they help influence the menu, but we find a way to introduce kids to more vegetables, and just understanding where food comes from. And then we do lots of different events, whether it's a sit down, very high elevated luncheon for a dozen people that are underneath in the grotto area, or like you've had the pleasure of coming out and we've fed 900 people in a day.
Yes,
It's a little bit more of a concession style, if you will. But again, we're still focusing on local ingredients, local products, eating seasonally, and just trying to remind people that when they say, why is this dish so good? Generally, it's because we didn't do a whole lot to really, quite frankly, fuck it up. There was some beautiful beef or pork that was processed not far from here that we used in the menu, and the vegetables were either grown here at Oxbow, or they were grabbed from another farm partner that we have, whether it's out in Snohomish or in Carnation or somewhere local to the Puget Sound, if you will. And so that's really our job here, is just to make food really enjoyable, approachable, put a little fun spin on it, but not try to really over elaborate on the food. At the beginning of my career, everything was about cute little dots and all these layers and micros and all that stuff. And that doesn't really have a place out here. Doesn't mean it doesn't have a place in some houses and some kitchens, but out here, like behind me, it's, vegetables are being roasted in a fire. And we're trying to approach it and letting the vegetables speak for themselves, if you will. So yeah, that's how I got here. It's been an amazing opportunity.
I absolutely love it. I think there's a couple things for me, like the idea that, like, okay, we're gonna bring out the kids, or whether you're doing an event. I mean, I can recall an event where we ran out of potatoes, and you looked at one of the kids, and I think we were out at the UW farm that
Oh
week,
yeah,
and like, oh, well, we need more potatoes, and hey, this student has been like cultivating the potatoes all season.
right.
Hey, Julie, can you go grab us more potatoes? And boom, we had more potatoes, and then we washed
Right.
them and we cooked them, and it was like, now this is where it's supposed to be. Like there's a very like like, pardon the pun, but there's a grounding space in that, But also, I think I love to think about this, because farm to table has become like the high end feel.
Oh
Right,
yes,
right.
really has. Yeah.
Like the what you might have called fine dining has in many spaces has become, the farm to table movement. Well,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, except that how many people does that actually get to, because of the price point? Because
Of
to make
course.
a living on it, it's that. So I think
Right.
just the fact that you've been able to be out on a farm, interact with the farms. I mean,
Right.
the guy who raised the beef, and you know him by name. I think that's
Right.
super, super special. And it doesn't come at a $95 price tag. It comes at,
Right.
you can get to be able to come out to Oxbow Farm and go to this concession stand that is unlike anything else that anybody's ever done. Right.
Right.
Like, and I mean, quite frankly, you and I would joke a couple times, like, people were like, how come the food doesn't come out fast? It's like, because good food takes time, man.
Exactly.
But it actually makes me pretty fired up. I love that you've been able to do that. You've been able to bring that to people. Like, I think that there are some kids out there that their life is going to be altered because they got like this farm fresh, like, I mean, fries, right? Like
Right. Yeah.
this year alone was the year of like the farm fries.
It really was this year. Yeah.
So just to be able to do that. So let's go back to the journey feel here.
Sure.
If you're looking back and you're talking to beginner chef, beginner cook, young chef, whatever, somebody who hasn't gotten to take as many steps as you have, what do you feel like is the thing you want to share with them to kind of say, hey, like, if you want to get to where I am or what I've done or these kinds of things, what is the advice that you would give?
Yeah, of course. I think the biggest thing would be to ask questions. I see now a lot of younger cooks that are coming up, and now there's so much information out on the internet that didn't exist for you or I a couple
Yeah.
decades ago, that they can look up anything and you can find a video on how to make risotto or what cipollini onions are, or it doesn't matter what it is. And the reality is that they get a very surface level piece of information a lot of times. There's so much information out there that you can grab it so easily that I think it's almost you learn it and you forget it instantaneously. And for me, I can still dig deep into this brain of mine and I can still remember recipes that I was making a decade ago. And there was a reason why it worked. Maybe it was in that space, because of the kitchen setting, the oven, the whatnot, and that's why it worked there. And maybe it doesn't work in the next space, but I find that a lot of cooks are just taking the information that's on the internet and saying this is how it's supposed to be, instead of asking the cook next to them or the chef next to them. Even though I may be running a space as the executive chef for whatnot reason, I will still go to the cook who I'm going to say, I want you to make risotto, and we're going to talk through it. And I'm hopefully passing on some knowledge, but I'm also giving them the opportunity to ask questions, but also give me some insight on maybe there's something that I'm not aware of on why maybe it works better for them for whatever reason. Maybe it's because of their station, because of the limitations, because of all the other things that they need to do in their day that I'm unaware of. Maybe there's some prep that, maybe didn't get finished yesterday because I can't see everything. But having them have that ability to ask the questions, understand why I want them to do it, but also we're also having an conversation, an honest conversation of like, this is what needs to happen, how we need to do it, versus just this is how I think it should be done because I learned it on the internet, and being afraid to ask somebody next to you. So don't be afraid. No question is dumb. It doesn't matter how simple it is. You should never be afraid. And I'm 46 years old and I'm still asking questions and I'll never stop. And that's what's great about the industry, is that you'll never stop learning, right? As long as you're willing to be inquisitive. But if you feel like you know everything, or because somebody told you how to do it, that's the right answer. It's not always the right answer. Just because it's good in this kitchen doesn't mean it's going to be good in the next kitchen. And, if you ask, you might learn something. So don't be afraid to fucking ask some questions, for Christ's sake.
Questions. I one of the things that I loved about being in kitchens and getting to go from kitchen to kitchen to kitchen and maybe visiting a kitchen was everybody's got their list. Like every chef has their list of like, oh no, we do it this way. And it's like,
right.
Well, why? Right. And sometimes they've got great reasons because we never trim the flame above this, or we never do, and it's like these absolute conditions that exist in that space that inform how their food looks and tastes and feels. I mean, I just remember being in Washington, D.C. and being in this one kitchen, and the cooks never saw a ticket the whole night. It was all verbal.
Right.
It was like, why would you do that? And the chef was like, because I don't need them to be thinking about anything else but the food. I don't want them to look at the tickets. My job is to do that. And so just those little structural pieces were always have always been fascinating to me. Right. Like how everybody's got their own dogma to it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think you and I came from a space where things were far more communal in the way that things learn. I think you touched on it, right? We didn't have the random moments of access that are available to the folks nowadays, where like if you wanted to know something, you had to ask. Here, and so like I have experienced, I think with you sometimes, where something from the internet comes up and it's like, yeah, that works, but only when this occurs. It doesn't necessarily work when you're working over fire, because a gas stove or the induction burner that's fancy and cool
it draws too much power and it doesn't really work quite well,
and then poof, right
but exactly
just the old-fashioned way of well how do you keep that from burning? Well, you move it around or you raise it up and whatever you have to do.
That instinctual knowledge as a cook. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of that is cooking is instinctual and just paying attention and listening.
Yeah.
You know, you always say, like, I think we've made a joke before, like somebody says, how do you know when the bread's done? Well, because I can hear it. And you're like, what do you mean? You can't hear it. And you're like, well, no, you can if you listen. If you
Yeah.
listen long enough, these ingredients will tell you. They'll tell you when they're done, whether it's smell, sometimes sight, but also like listening. You know, listen
Yeah.
to what
But
people have to say.
it crackles.
Yeah,
it
it
crackles.
does.
It
It
crackles. I
does.
mean, a burning pan sizzles at
Yeah.
a higher frequency than a lower pan.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly.
And then of course we dive into some physics and some chemistry that all of us
Yes.
simple cooks just we don't necessarily need to know, but we understand what's happening there.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I mean, I think that it's great to hear like just kind of the trajectory and the arc.
Mhm.
Um, what do you think? What do you think? I guess let's just push back to the farm for a second. What do you think is maybe the essential skill or two that is required to be able to do that? So you got a person who's been in, call them institutional kitchens, call them standard
Mhm.
restaurant
Right.
kitchens, and
Yeah.
they want to be cooking outdoors. What is your advice? What is the thing that like sets that apart for you?
I mean, it's definitely a bit of a drive for sure, and understanding that there, you had touched a little bit on it, like the elements; those are going to change the factors a lot. You know, you had said, you know, we work over a wood fire grill, and it's extremely hot. It's, you know, around your knees. It's probably 750, 800 degrees, and there's not, you know, a barrier in between you and that fire. And I think that that sort of, for me, is a little bit, what drives me to that is that connection between me and the fire and the ingredients, and wanting to put yourself out there. And to forge those relationships takes a long time. I think you have to sort of ease your way into it. You know, at least I have for mine. You know, like I said, it took us 6.5 years before we even really did our first real events where I had a stainless steel table and I felt like, okay, we're getting into this space. Um, but it's really, you know, for me, this was a driving force, something I always knew. But if you, as a cook, are in an institutional setting and you're not enjoying it for whatever those reasons are, what's great about the culinary world is that there are so many different facets of it. But find what it is that speaks to you, what speaks to your heart, what speaks to you as a cook, and then what speaks to you as a way that you want to serve others. Because reality is, we're in the hospitality industry, right? So my
Right.
job is to serve other people. And yes, I can serve myself in that I write a really pretty menu and I think that it sounds great because I put agrodolce on it and micro Red Bull on it or whatever these things are. But the reality is that you're going to be serving this food to somebody else that is then going to judge you on that food. So being open to that, being welcoming to other people's feedback, whether it's good or not. You know, there was dishes in my early in my career that I made that I thought were revolutionary, and boy, did that little old lady, she reminded me that it wasn't as good because of X, Y, and Z reasons, or it was great because it reminded her of her grandmother,
Yeah.
because I made it really simple or whatever it was. But being open to that feedback. So putting yourself on a plate, not being afraid of judgment, I think is really important. Important, and also being true to who you want to be. You know, I think that I went through that whole fine dining aspect because I was trying to be somebody who I wasn't, and that I wanted to make these really pretty plates of food, and I wanted to show all these techniques that I had. But then, you know, you come back 10 years later, and where am I? I'm standing over a wood fire grill, which is like a giant barbecue, and I'm burning a bunch of vegetables. But the reality is that I'm doing what really speaks to me, you know, and really highlighting that food simply. So because you're in a cooking situation, whether it's a bar and grill or a country club or linea, wherever you are, if that you're not happy there, you know, try to really look inward and find what it is that you really enjoy. Sometimes it's like what you cook at home, right? Like on my day off, you know, I might make gyros. And so maybe that's what I want to drive into. Maybe I don't necessarily want to open a gyro stand, but maybe that food really speaks to me. And why is that? Well, maybe because the flavors that pop in, you know, Mediterranean food, whether it's the caraway or the fenugreek or the coriander, whatever those are, maybe those are flavors that I'm really geared towards. So find food that maybe speaks of that, and then find that there might be a relationship between you and that food in a different parameter that maybe you hadn't even thought of. You know, don't be afraid to go look outside.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
yeah.
awesome. I I mean, I think that the times that I've been out to the farm, what always hits me is everybody's so happy to be out there,
Hmm.
right? Like
Yeah.
whether it's a day, a quiet day where there's a bunch of kids running around and they're getting to do the farm education stuff,
Right.
or we're doing that day of 900 where there's hay rides and it's Oktoberfest and there's all these things happening,
Right.
and but all the way down to you and I and the other cooks and even like the dishwasher that you bring out, who's just
Hmm.
stoked to be out in like the outdoors amongst other people
Right.
who are happy to be there. I feel like that for me was always like just the great kind of feeling of it all.
Yeah, I agree. It feeds your soul.
Yeah.
There's a little bit that comes from that you don't recognize. They always say like, if you go outside, you'll appreciate the world a little bit more. Get some fresh air, right? Get some sun on your face. Especially here in Seattle, that's something we take for granted in May through September. But man, when November comes around, we all start recognizing that we're missing a little bit of that sunshine. And the same thing comes from being outside. Wood fire is very instinctual. It's to our cores as who we are as human beings, if you will. That's the evolution of us learning how to make fire to getting to create Microsoft or whatever it is, however far you want to sort of span those two things. But the reality is that speaks to who we are, and then food is what feeds us. From a substance standpoint, but also from our human needs. We all need that, and then food makes us happy,
Yeah.
right? If you eat some shitty soggy French fries, you're not really enjoying it, right? But if you get some really hot, fresh, crispy fries that came out of a fryer later and they're hot and the ketchup's cold and it's got just the right amount of salts and the sun's catching you right that day, it can make the difference in your whole day. So being out there has really driven that, and then you get to see where the food's growing right around you. Again, you're connecting that to the person who's there. And then I'm really excited that you're there. I'm smiling. I'm happy. I'm
Well,
thankful that you're here. I'm thanking you for coming, and handing over some of your hard-earned money for a dish that I've made in my head, and now I'm translating it to a dish. And hopefully Simon's really enjoy making it, or Colin or Keish or whoever's out there for the day with us. But we're all really excited to be there because it's a great place for us to step outside of, like you said, if you are in an institutional setting or whatnot, and then, you get the sun in your face and the wind and the fire and all these great things. And, you get to work with your hands and you go home and you're dirty and you're tired, but you feel like you accomplished something for the day because you made people smile and they were happy and they left and they said thank you when they left. It made it all worth it for the day. So I think that's what Oxbow really provides for a lot of people, whether, like you said, it's kids or old people or people who've been there for a decade and then they've seen the evolution of the farm and they're really just excited to see where the farm's going. So yeah, it's a magical place. Like I said, it's my favorite place in all of that valley, and it holds a special place in my heart and always will.
awesome. Yeah, I mean, clearly, I think I'm gonna sum all of what you just set up into connection.
Yeah,
So cool, awesome. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming to play with us for just a little while. Chef Journeys is something I've been trying to get to for a good long time, and I'm super excited that it's finally starting to happen. Um, so I just want to bid you a good day and say thank you so much for coming, and
yeah. Thanks.
I
I really had a
appreciate it.
great time, Simon. I look forward to seeing how far this journey for yourself goes. I'm sure that there's going to be a million other people that want to get on your podcast, and I can't wait to see all that. And maybe you'll welcome me back in 6 months or a year from now. And who knows? Who knows where I'll be, and who knows where you'll be? But I look forward to reconnecting then, Simon.
I look forward to seeing the rest of that journey. Thanks,
All
Seth.
right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a great day.